Hello, Reg viewers. We're back with another Regcast, but this time it's a very timely one. Usually sort of Regcasts exist for stuff that's already been launched. Well, Office 365 has been launched, but only yesterday, unless you're watching this on the on-demand, where ignore what I just said. So it's new. We know that there's a lot of you are wondering exactly what Office 365 delivers that might be new for you, or whether to get involved with it at all. So we had a look and found some guys that know all about this. So we're going to try and help you in the next hour with some really practical information about what it does, how it does it, and what you need to watch out for. So let's work out who's on the Regcast today. I mean, you know me. But joining us from Penman IT, down the far end, Hutton Henry. Hutton, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Tim.
Hutton, do people call you Henry Hutton a lot?
An awful lot, yes.
Yeah, that's what comes having your name the wrong way around, mate. I could have told you about that. Now, tell me about Penman IT. What do you do?
We're a Microsoft Gold partner. We focus predominantly on Exchange and System Center products, mostly on-premise, but we've been lucky enough to be part of the private beta for 365.
Uh-huh. And what sort of people do you work with? What sort of clients do you work with?
Retail, finance and construction, usually around the 5K user mark. So
the big boys and everything like that. But you can talk about, because I know we'll get a lot of people wondering about whether this is for smaller businesses.
So we've actually implemented it for our own company as well, so we can talk about the smaller end as well.
Uh-huh. So, it's what's the industry phrase? You're eating your dog food. That's the one, isn't it? Yeah. Now, also from Penman IT today, joined by John Thompson. John, you're the technical end of this, aren't you?
That's right, Tim, yes.
Yeah, OK. Now, we're talking today especially because you've implemented Office 365 with a large retail client.
Correct, yeah.
That's it. What sort of thing have you been doing for them?
So since October last year, we've been working with our client to implement Exchange Online and look at testing Link Online as well, and been involved with the private beta from a planning to technical implementation stage, and then also getting the user feedback from it as well.
Okie doke, great. Now, also from our old mates Freeform Dynamics, Dale, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks, Tim.
Now, Dale, is this Office 365 thing a big thing? Is it, is this something that we should all be going, oh, the world's changed?
I'm not sure we should be quite going like that, but it is a pretty significant milestone in the evolution of the market, I reckon, and for a couple of reasons, really. The whole idea of hosted Exchange and hosted SharePoint and all the kind of hosted backends from Microsoft is not a new one. It's been kicking around for at least 10 years as far as I'm aware. But the problem is that it's been quite fragmented. There's been lots of service providers out there, each hosting in different ways to different service levels, putting different service surrounds. The price you can pay for an Exchange mailbox, for instance, has varied massively. So for customers, it's been quite confusing. Going around, if you are looking for cloud-type services, it's been a bit of a hodgepodge. So I think one of the things this does is it kind of provides a nice leveling of the whole thing in terms of there's some basic offerings here with service levels and everything else that we'll go into later, which kind of sets the benchmark for everyone else to come on. And it just makes everything a bit more understandable and predictable for the buyer, I think. And that was really, really important.
Now, is there also a sense that a sort of a technology or a way of doing things gets validated once the big guys really get involved?
So I think possibly, and obviously Microsoft is rightly or wrongly, and I don't particularly have an opinion on this, but it is trusted out there amongst lots of people. That's what our research says. I think more to the point, people are really familiar with Microsoft apps and the Microsoft backends. So one of the interesting things that we pick up is when people are looking at cloud, quite often they're looking at changing both the delivery model and the application set. And what this does is actually at least keep one aspect of that fairly constant. I mean, that's not strictly true when you talk about migration, given where people are talking from. But you're not changing as much as just, you're not changing everything at once. I think that's really important. So that level of familiarity is...
You're nodding along with that one, Hutton. Is that the case when you're looking at it with your clients and you can say to them, look, it's Microsoft stuff that you know about?
Sure, the familiarity really wins with this product. The user's uptake of the product is great because they know Office, they know Outlook, so they can pretty much get up and going. We're only really talking mostly about the back-end changes to facilitate some new ways of working.
Yeah.
So can I just have one other thing, which is that what Microsoft, I think, has done here is, it's kind of come full circle a little bit. Microsoft, a little while ago, was talking about software plus services.
Sure.
Which, if you translate that into normal everyday language, is mixing on-premise stuff with cloud stuff. And this whole Office 365 model is predicated on blending as you need to. So it's not forcing you to put everything into the cloud. It's not forcing you to put everything through a browser. It's giving you options to mix and match. And all of our research, and a lot of people listening to this, will be of the same opinion. People want that kind of freedom and flexibility. They don't want to go whole hog at once. So that's quite an important dimension to this thing as well.
Good. Now, I just have to mention, for those of you who come here for the first time to one of our Regcasts, the little button above my head, which means that you can ask questions. Please do that. I see some of you have found this already, actually. We might have a lot of questions today, guys. And you can also get a download of our presentation as well. Give us your feedback afterwards, too. So let's crack on with this one, because there is quite a lot of information and people really want to know about it. One of the important things at the beginning, Hutton, is that Office 365 isn't just the Office applications, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, as you'll see from that slide, there's four main products. We have to consider what you're changing from the infrastructure side, the back end, so email, SharePoint, collaboration through Link, and then what may be front-ending those products. So Office is being provided, if you want it, within your within the products you actually select. So.
Yeah. Now, John, it's bigger. There's more of it than there was with BPOS. Is it fundamentally different to BPOS?
I think just having this sort of consolidated suite is what's impressive about it, and they've brought it under the sort of Office 365 banner, so I guess from a marketing perspective as well, it's a little bit more straightforward for Microsoft to talk about it as well.
Yeah.
I think from the products that they've got there, the area we focused on, say around Exchange Online, what you're looking at now with Exchange Online is Exchange 2010, so a lot of the rich features that you'd expect in on-premise, you're actually getting those online as well, so it's an impressive product.
SharePoint and Link are sort of like, they can be Cinderella packages here, aren't they? Because a lot of people just don't bother with them, do they, Dale? I know you're a SharePoint user, aren't you?
Yeah.
But a lot of people just don't get SharePoint, and Link as yet is an emerging technology.
Yeah, I think SharePoint itself, it just gets totally misimplemented and misused, and I think because when it first emerged on the market, it was kind of bundled with Windows Server. It just got switched on and users ran riot with it, and people ended up with chaos very, very quickly. SharePoint implemented well is just like any other sort of content collaboration system. I wouldn't argue that it was better, worse, or anything. It comes down to how you implement it. Link is interesting because this is one area in the research where we find a big disjoint between people's perception, having never experienced that kind of real-time collaboration, to those that have experienced it. And we came across, I remember just doing research back in the early days of mobile email, and you get people who say, I can't imagine why the hell I would ever want mobile email.
Yep. Yeah.
You give them a device, try and take it back a month later,
sure.
and they don't want to give it back. And I think it's the same with this real-time collaboration stuff. So I do think it's important. Whether people are going to appreciate its importance is another question, because most people don't know they can benefit from it.
I think it's also key to mention that whilst there are four main products there, the offerings are quite modular underneath, so Exchange can be split into a number of different, especially for larger enterprises, so that it's more affordable and suitable for different types of clients. Yeah, and that's really key because when you start to look at implementing this product, you may not want to try everything at once.
Mm-hmm.
So
so tell me a little bit about the pricing. You don't buy all of it; you can buy bits of it.
So I mean, from small businesses, there's a scale of £4 to £10 per user per month.
Per user per month.
Yes,
this is how you pay for it.
And for enterprises, it's around £2.60 to £17.75 a month. Depending, that's basic Exchange Online to having the full package with Office bundled in as well.
Mm-hmm. And so you can just scale that up according to the number of users, and is someone saying is there yearly pricing for this? It's not year; it's all done by the month.
There's per month, but then there's yearly. It depends on the larger, if you've got the larger accounts. So.
Okay.
Depends on your licensing agreement as well, so that's something that you'd have to check out.
So your existing license for your on-premise software, this affects how you end up.
To your enterprise agreements.
You end up sort of paying for that. One of the things that always comes up is that some people have a lot of funds available for sort of big projects and stuff, but it's a little bit more difficult to do these across the board monthly payment licenses for businesses, isn't it? There has to be sometimes, John, a little bit of rethinking about how you end up paying for your IT.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think traditionally with your on-premise, you're looking at probably a larger capex spend to start off with, and then an incremental OpEx spend continuing. This is shifting it, so you're actually shifting it purely into your operating costs, and similarly with Office Professional, going from your normal licensing model into a subscription model, that can be quite a change for an organisation as well.
Uh-huh. Here's another question on this. I'll tell you, these questions are bombing in already. Thanks for this, guys. Yeah. Turn up for one of those, but we don't get many questions actually, because these are good ones. Okay, so you want to use it, but some of your users are offline. Do they need the full sort of like on-premise license as well? If they can't be connected, can they use 365?
Offline in what way?
Offline. So basically, I'm a 365 user,
sure.
but I can't always be connected, and I haven't got any, so I go to a place where there's no, I've got no internet connection.
Oh, I see. I think you pay your continual sort of monthly payment for those licenses.
Yeah, but can I? Will it be able to use it?
If the question is a practical one, then yes. I mean, the whole thing is designed to support offline as well as online. So the very low end, those entry-level licenses are pure web only.
Right.
So a bit like some of the other offerings in the market that are pure web-based. You do have to be online to actually access those. I mean, we as analysts don't believe that that's necessarily the bulk of where the action's going to be.
No.
Because this kind of offline requirement, even for very small businesses, is still pretty important.
Now, there's and also with these full applications that you get here, as someone was saying that I can't find it because there's so many of them. There are missing features on some of the apps at the moment.
So you've got the Office web apps, but depending which SKU you go for, you can get the full package.
Right, the SharePoint, actually, he was saying it's not quite as big.
Okay. I believe with SharePoint, there are certain features that just can't be used in a multi-tenant environment.
Right.
So you can't customize a system because it would effectively be... It would affect other people on that in that environment. So.
Nature of the environment
custom
on that.
Widgets and that they can't be written.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean. I hope that's helpful. So, do you find that when you're talking to potential customers, that they're thinking this broadens their thinking, and they start thinking, oh yeah, let's think about Link, let's think about that, or do they say, first of all, just move me? Give me the same thing as I've had before.
We try to help them broaden their...
I'm sure you do, it's good business for you.
But I mean, some of the justification around the product is being able to help people work in different ways. So often the clients already have a need they need to satisfy, whether it's a resilience problem or they want to be able to talk between buildings or whatever. So they definitely have to think differently, and they have to think beyond just the back end of it as well. They need to think about changes to their clients as well.
Yeah.
I think it's different for smaller businesses and larger ones, because a lot of larger businesses do have hodgepodge of different web conferencing and various other bits
Sure.
in place that they've just accumulated over the years. So they kind of get the principle, but this is a potential way of sorting out some of the fragmentation that exists.
There is a little bit, if you've never done anything SharePoint-like or Link-like,
Right.
there is a little bit about, it's not just whether it's any good, it's like, what's this?
Yeah.
How do I work with it?
I think from a link perspective, as Hutton mentioned earlier, we've implemented it as a small business, and immediately you're getting a return on link. It's straightforward to install.
So what things do you do for people who don't get it?
If we're split into, as we are, we work in different sites. Communication can be made a lot easier just by instant messaging. You've got the presence information there as well.
Yeah.
So straight away you can see whether somebody is contactable or not. And so we saw benefits very quickly on that. I guess at a larger scale, I think you mentioned earlier, Dale, sometimes people can be maybe a bit more emotive about instant messaging or using link or collaboration and things like that. And also it's about, if we're going to implement these, so there could be video or things like that, it can require greater planning, say around networking or other areas like that.
But the point is, you can mix and match. I mean, small businesses, quite often they're using Skype and other public instant messaging systems. If you're happy with that, just stick with it. They might be using Citrix Online or whatever. If you're happy with that, stick with it. The benefit of pulling it all into one place is the presence thing, and it's all under one umbrella from an authentication point of view and that kind of thing.
There's just one thing that's coming into question. We've got to get straight away. Is the idea is that you can keep some of your users with their existing Office apps, and you can migrate some of them to Office 365, and it's not like the 365 users drop off the map.
Right.
It's still there, but with some asterisks that we'll deal with in a minute. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's possible to have coexistence.
That's it. Okay, so we'll deal with that. Now, I blew up the small print here, increased the font size on it here to see what Microsoft's promising on that. Got the 99.9%. So far, you've been involved with this when it's been in beta. Has it been stable?
Yeah, we haven't seen a problem.
Yeah, so for about 6 months we've had users running on the system, and it's been really good performance and a good level of reliability as well.
Yeah, we'll see that scales. They put a lot of money into these data centres. Let's hope they did a good job at building them. Now, Active Directory. This is again something is because this keys into people mixing their on-premise with an Office 365. You've got to get Active Directory sorted out, haven't you?
Sure. So you need. So it's possible to install the services we'll cover to integrate your Active Directory and to allow single sign-on, which is a step forward from BPOS. And also the fact that people can see each other and send each other emails or obviously emails, but calendar information is really key.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, it's not just an advantage, Dale. If you're going to work this properly, then getting your Active Directory sorted out across the organisation, getting that single sign-on sorted out, that's where a huge benefit is, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like a lot of these things actually. And it's come up on other webcasts we've done around anything to do with cloud. If you go into it without having your act together, you're going to run into lots of problems. So it often is a prompt to actually make sure you have got things properly sorted.
Yeah. Now let's have a look. You've just done some research on how people are using software as a service, and how they use external services as well. So take us through some of your findings from this, because this is really relevant to what we're doing today.
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier on the fact that lots of people are interested in mixing and matching on-premise and hosted, and all this pie chart says here that we're looking at is that there's a minority of people that say we will push as much into external services as possible, but they are a minority. Most people are considering now external services, whether it's cloud as anyone might want to define it, or whether it's some other form of outsourcing of a more traditional nature, doesn't really matter. But most people are open-minded. But the centre of gravity when it comes to outsourcing is of any kind is very much to do it selectively. Mm-hmm. So you don't come across many people who want to go the whole kit and caboodle, and that circles back to what I was mentioning earlier on. So that's what that chart says. It's an inclusive kind of world. People aren't looking to throw it all over the wall.
So that leads to the question: what do you then select? And you've picked out this category of utility software as a service, as a special Freeform Dynamics thing. Isn't it?
We've had lots of.
You can't say it without paying him a royalty.
We're getting. Well, there's lots of different definitions of cloud. You can define it different ways. And one of the classic ones is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service.
Mm-hmm.
And most people are familiar with that. What we were finding is that software as a service is a bit of a catch-all, because you've got everything from little utility things at one end to full-blown ERP systems at the other, and they're all called software as a service. So without getting bogged down in loads of categories, we just basically said, look, there's stuff that you implement and you go through a full-blown functional configuration, sometimes customization exercise as part of it. So ERP might fall into that category, and higher-end CRM. There's a whole bunch of other stuff where, of course, you need to sort of migrate and put your policies on top and everything else. But basically, as far as the application is concerned, you're taking it as it is. And we kind of lump those into the bucket we call utility SaaS. And things like email, content management, web conferencing, all that kind of stuff falls into that kind of category. You don't do a lot of customization on it.
You get financially a good deal because you don't.
Well, and the point is that is because the cost model is quite different. So when you look at utility or you might call them commodity type products if they were on premise, a lot of your cost is actually in running the platform. So cloud takes the cost out of the platform piece. Therefore, proportionally, you get quite a big cost benefit. Whereas with more complex applications, the cost isn't necessarily in the platform. Platform is a relatively small part of the overall cost of ownership. So moving to the cloud doesn't necessarily have this huge cost impact that it does with utility. And that's quite a big, when you run the numbers, it's arguable whether more complex applications are more expensive or less expensive. I mean, you certainly can't generalise and say they're always less expensive by moving them into the cloud. But with utility stuff, you probably can, and I think that's an important point.
I'd also add that with the utility stuff, you can have the vendor basically running it better than you probably could do in-house.
Here's the thing. So Phil has a question. He said 99.9 is not good enough.
Right.
He said, we need more than 99.9.
Okay, so I believe with things like FOP, the Forefront, Microsoft started with that as their benchmark, and as the product has actually evolved, it's gone up to the 5 nines. In our case, and some of the clients we've seen, 99.9 is better than they could run. So.
What do you think? One thing you pointed out in the past is that organisations tend to think that they're getting better availability than they actually are.
Well, they don't even think about it, more to the point. But when you ask them the question, it is clearly not 3 nines in terms of availability. I mean, if you genuinely need more than 3 nines, don't use Office 365. Go to Rackspace and use their hosted Exchange service, and they'll give you a much better quality of service. So
other hosters are available.
But the point I'm trying to make is, don't make any assumptions. And most people don't need more than 3 nines on Exchange.
As well, people are used to getting 5 nines from networking companies, aren't they? So you're comparing, not necessarily like for like there.
You're comparing it to picking up the telephone, that 5 nines kind of thing. Now, this is Reg Reader intentions in the next 3 years, Dale.
Yeah, there's 2 points from this particular chart. One of them is just one of my hobby horses, if anyone has heard me bang on about this before, and that all this newfangled cloud stuff doesn't suddenly make everything else that we've been doing in the past totally redundant and irrelevant.
I've never heard you mention that before.
We now have the proof.
Not that we needed it was worth it all along. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah.
Exactly. So the top part, I mean, there's still a place for traditional hosted services, etc. The other point from this chart, though, is the second bar from the bottom is that utility SaaSing, and you can see it stands out quite a bit more than other things. And I think if we move to the next chart,
I was just about to do that. There we go. Now it really stands out.
Yeah, so it's kind of homing in. I mean, I should mention at this point, don't take any of the percentages along the top literally, because this was an online survey. The topic was cloud and outsourcing. you're going to get people who are more into cloud and outsourcing answering the question. So, that isn't representative of the whole world.
I understand what you're saying. So it's self-selected. On the other hand, for people who are into it,
this is what they're telling us. So what's interesting here is two things. The first one is that dark blue line is traditional application hosting. So, all those guys out there that are still doing that. And, that isn't going to go away. Large companies have done that more than small companies, and that's going to remain the same. Complex SaaS, again, you see that's very size dependent. But the light blue bar is the utility SaaS, your email, your content management.
And that's broadly across the board. It doesn't matter.
It basically seems to be, everyone appreciates. So it plays well into large business and it plays well into small business. One thing I would say is, with large businesses, it quite often is about cost saving because they can they can stick this stuff on premise if they want to. With small businesses, a lot of them wouldn't even think about putting some of this facility on site. So the motivations are slightly different, but the point is it plays at all levels.
Yeah, so Alan, who's just asked, can we give a quick summary of how you implement this sort of thing? Well, it's good that you asked that right now, because, guys, now I'm going to look at exactly the sort of thing that you did. So, this customer that your retail customer that you've been working with over the past 6 months now?
Yes, yeah.
About 6 months on this. So this is, Hutton told me, this is when you showed up, this is the sort of problems that they had, which I think a lot of people will find typical.
Sure, we're finding more customers with Exchange 2003, they're at that decision point, do we go to the next version, do we look at these cloud solutions? For us, we'd looked at BPOS before as well, a while before, a little bit sceptical. We're used to implementing and running on premise.
What did you not like about BPOS? What makes you sceptical?
It was more about what we could implement and add value to, and we're almost as old-fashioned as our customers, and so we implementing these systems, and then if we were just sort of slightly adverse to it. Then we started to look at this product, especially as we were invited to be part of this private beta. And as we started to look at their problems, really, which was reliability and performance and the need for extra staff for storage and networking, we effectively were looking at admin overheads and problems with email over the long term.
So basically, they were going to have to go through some kind of upgrade anyway.
There had to be a change.
So that it either had to be on-premise or it had to be the cloud, but something had to break.
Sure. So if we're used to putting something on-premise and also putting a management overhead, that's the kind of thing we're used to delivering. And here we're taking something that's been provided to us and pushing that out, pushing their services out.
John, you put mobile platform on this one as well. So this is a new thing as well, that there are just so many mobile platforms on which now people demand office-type application.
Yeah, I think you're finding that across the board is that people are used to using their iPads, their iPhones, Android and various different devices to receive their own personal email, and then possibly questioning whether they can get that same sort of service or use that similar device for their work as well.
Yeah. And so, again, the question is, can they? Before, then not for this particular customer. What sort of devices do they have?
Blackberries.
Blackberries, right. Is it sorted out now on the BlackBerry Office 365?
I think from BlackBerry testing, we didn't get involved in that as part of the private beta. That's primarily down to the fact that Microsoft and RIM have recently agreed a zero-cost service, but as I understand it, that is just in beta at the moment. So there should be an enterprise-level solution there, but it wasn't available for us to test at that time.
But it's coming along, because we did have a question about that as well. Because BlackBerry is the mobile platform of choice for a larger business at the moment.
Certainly it's by far the market leader in the higher end. Yeah.
But there's also the problem that we're supporting. Well, I'm not. The IT departments are supporting this variety of esoteric mobile platforms with different applications and different usage and different levels of security and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Does this help sort out that spaghetti?
Well, only insofar as you've got the Microsoft communication mechanism sitting in between the Exchange server and your mobile device. So, ActiveSync is pretty much become a de facto standard now for a lot of this stuff. And in that sense, if you're not on Exchange at the moment, which might be relevant to a lot of smaller businesses who are just using ISP, POP3 services, then moving to Exchange immediately unlocks a whole bunch of stuff, particularly around calendaring and doing it all in an integrated way. If you've got a full-blown on-premise Exchange environment, you're not going to see a huge amount of difference, unless you're on a very old version of Exchange, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
2003.
So, and if you look at, I guess from the differences, it's opening up more platforms to be used with a reliable back end. So you combine those benefits, and that's really the overall benefit for a company.
When you're dealing with this big customer, it was a competitive upgrade, wasn't it? They didn't just decide to go with 365. They were looking at other stuff as well.
Sure.
What were they looking at?
Lotus Live.
But they didn't fancy Lotus Live.
It was we had to actually run both pilots together, so we had to negotiate with the other companies to make sure we could implement 365 in the best way possible. You have to make updates to your schema for AD to allow your Exchange boxes to go on, but if we did that in the wrong order or the wrong time, it would have prevented the other cloud service from working. So to summarise, I guess the familiarity of this product really worked, and I think that's why this was being looked at. So
there is familiarity. Another question. Asking us to compare Office 365 to Google Apps, because it's the obvious question, Dale.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think if you look at the sort of entry-level Office 365 from the point of view is one of the things that Google quite likes to say is it's about pure web apps. That's an important thing for Google. And there is, there's a school of thought that says that's a great thing. Don't contaminate everything with client-side applications, run it all through the browser and that kind of stuff. For me, I think the biggest difference, there's two big differences. One of them is the familiarity thing, which, rightly or wrongly, we shouldn't underestimate the impact of that. The other thing is this mixing of offline and online, which I think is quite an important model. It's not to say that you can't do it with Google. You can plug Outlook into a Google backend, but this thing is designed to sort of work seamlessly across the offline online.
I understand. How would you compare the guys? What do you think about Google Apps?
Well, I guess we're kind of biased to the solution.
I know that we're across that one, but what do you think?
For ease of implementation, we looked at this. So, yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
I think it depends on your requirements, though, Tim. There's some Google Apps is being used very successfully by some pretty big organisations that we've spoken about in this forum.
Absolutely, and we've done some work with Google on that.
I think that it's kind of like for most people, I don't know if we mentioned this earlier on, but you want to keep the number of variables to a minimum. And actually, you could call it lazy, I suppose, at one extreme, but you can call it kind of risk management at the other extreme.
Yeah, sure.
The fewer things you change when moving to the cloud, the more comfortable you are. That's just a fact of life. It's not that one's necessarily better or...
I think around what we were looking at with our client, the proof of concept and the pilot we were doing, the key drivers for it were just making sure that email functionality was working well, and calendaring was a big thing as well. So straight away with Outlook, you've got those rich calendaring features and the free busy information, and so that was a big selling point around this product.
Just another question coming on as people have noticed from the logos that you got up there, Mac and Linux compatibility. How well does this work on Mac Linux platforms? These guys that you worked with, they had a lot of Mac, didn't they?
Yeah. Indeed.
Sorry.
Go on again.
From a Mac user's perspective, the proof of concept worked really well for them. We were implementing this in an Exchange 2003 organisation where they weren't able to implement Outlook 2011 for their users. What we were able to do straight away was to give them Outlook 2011 because it integrated with Exchange Online. So straight away they've got a richer client that they're happy to be using. And then additionally, you've got iPad users and iPhone users that are able to get their business email on their devices straight away. So from the user surveys that we did at the end of the proof of concept, some of the happiest people in that were a Mac population, which for a Microsoft product is pretty good going.
And presumably for Snow Leopard users, they can just hook their native email client into the Exchange backend as they would normally with Office, with Exchange 310?
Well, we weren't using that though. We were using
your Office space.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I'm
pretty sure you get the same.
I mean, on that slide, the key things as well as we obviously integrating terminal services and VDI. And if there's anything that this project brought up was changes or pending changes on the desktop had to be looked at. So.
Right, so it does tend to... It's not just a question of, let's buy some of that with a credit card. You're going to have to put some extra work.
For the big organisations,
For the big organisations.
So, I mean, if for the smaller ones, you would get Office included and off you go. So.
I just have a quick look at on the architecture slide, John. What do you pull out of this one?
Yes, hopefully what we're trying to demonstrate here that there are a lot of on-premise services that exist within your Exchange organisation. And once you've migrated through to Office 365, then you've hopefully maintaining and supporting a lot less of those kind of services. So we've got some direct equivalents in 365 for some of the things that we can see in that slide. So, for example, mail hygiene is dealt with by Forefront Online Protection for Exchange. Additionally, archiving, you can get personal archives for individual mailboxes dependent upon which subscription plan that you choose. There's probably two areas there that do need to be thought about, though. One is Bears and Blackberries, which we've already pointed out. There's a service that's in beta, but as yet we weren't able to test that. But secondly, it's around public folders. Exchange Online doesn't support public folders, so you need to plan accordingly around that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when there's just one. I was just checking the questions here. You caught me out. There was Mickey's pointed out that he uses Mac Mail and iCal and Calendar for the Mac applications with Office 365. No trouble at all.
Okay.
It's just it's just for your information.
Thank you.
Pretty sure
on that one. Yeah. So now looking again at this coexistence thing is coming up over and over and over again, and it's one thing that's came up. The conversation I've had with people so far about it is, and people who've tried it, recommend it. Just pick up a couple, find how it works. Just pick up a couple of Office 365, licenses, and use those. See how it works together, and it works fine. That's the claim. Does it work fine?
Yeah, I mean, if you see from that slide, we have to implement 3 services to allow that coexistence to run.
Yes.
But I think you take a step backwards, really, and before you assume it works fine, you look at the service descriptions. So it's the big documents, or lengthy documents that explain how the service works, and you need to map that against your business requirements, and then take it on the pilot.
Right, so what sort of things do you have to work through then? What are you going to see in those documents that's going to make you sit
limitations, security. So things like the size of messages. I think they've been increased recently. They were 25 meg during our pilot. They're now 35 meg. Message rates. So if your business does mass emails, you might find that the rates you're allowed to have per minute don't really suit your business. But then even, a different thing that we looked at was processes. How does your company work? And if you're engaging with a utility like this, are you going to incur any costs because of the way you do things?
Because you do things in an unconventional way somehow, and it's going to push them into the... what sort of things would turn up for that then? I mean, did this turn up for this client, your retail client that you've been working with?
Things like staffing, so you might have peaks and troughs, and so how they increase and decrease throughout the year.
Yeah. These are questions that need to be asked, don't they, John?
Yeah, and definitely around user management. So you're assigning a subscription license that could be paid on a monthly or an annual basis. You want to make sure that if you've got people leaving the company that you're not still paying for them. So
for 11 months when they've already gone.
Yeah, so you need to tie up that process between whether it's your HR teams and your IT teams to make sure that you've got an accurate reflection in your Active Directory of people who are actually using the right services.
This is quite tedious detail work, but there's no avoiding it.
You could put it that way, Tim, but...
Yeah, come on. I can see it in your eyes. It's quite tedious detail work, isn't it?
I think it's really interesting because when we got our guys together, what we noticed was that they would get really into the technical detail. What does Exchange do, and how do the databases affect it? And we had to learn as a company to lift away from the technical detail and get into the detail of the service. So there is this kind of tedium, you may say, but really you have to nail that. You have to understand it before you implement it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, customers would be unhappy.
So we've got some more questions asking for sort of more detail on Linux clients. Can you? Is that something that you can do from?
Right. No, we haven't tested Linux.
You haven't
clients,
tested
so
Linux on Linux clients.
Yeah.
So you have to find that one out yourself and report it back to us. And on minimum, there's a question on sort of minimum software on the client to be able to use this. Now that's an important thing. What's the minimum?
From an Outlook perspective, it's Outlook 2007 Service Pack 2 and above. And so I think that's going back to sort of Hutton's point earlier around, yes, there are back-end changes, but you also need to be aware of what the front-end ones might be as well and plan around those. And that was something key for us. I guess additionally looking at the Macs, I don't know what the lowest client is on that, but the one we tested against was Outlook 2011.
I think also from Internet Explorer, it's IE7, isn't it? So if you're running IE6, as a lot of companies are.
Yeah, I guess exactly. So again, these things have to be. You have to go through this.
Sure.
There's no skipping past this sort of thing, and then. That the upgrade from 2003 to 2007, that's going to have to be done.
For Outlook, yeah.
For Outlook, yeah. These sort of things can be glossed over, can't they, Dale? And and skipped over when it comes to something like this, where you think, let's just get let's get this mess out of here.
Yeah, I mean, understanding of dependencies is a pretty important part of the whole thing, and I would stress actually that's as true for smaller organisations as it is for larger ones, because it is easy to get caught out by simple things like that.
And I guess with the smaller businesses, it's the affordable Office package gets you beyond the initial problem, really. So.
Yeah. It's a quick question. You might answer this one, Dale. Someone's saying, is this what's going to turn up when people buy a new PC in the future, then, instead of getting an Office?
Good question.
Go on there, Tim. Sorry.
All right. We'll wait and see. Next time we catch someone from Microsoft in the studio, we'll make them answer that as the first question. All right. Let's again, people look at planning of the project. Sure. So let's look at this timeline, because there's a lot of work that's gone in here before you actually migrated anyone at all. Was that because it was beta software, or is this because this is how you need to do it?
I think that's the general shape of a project. I mean, there are delays in there because the beta issues at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. But as we've mentioned before, you need to go through those service descriptions. You should probably go through the Microsoft workbooks, and you need a plan, and you need to know what you're implementing. Mm. In this project, we also we did a bit of what you would normally do for an on-premise solution, which is we installed the products in a test environment. Well, the interesting thing about that is you need a live internet connection and probably a whole mail system to test this thoroughly. So there's some engineering to be done on your live environment if you want to run a pilot like this. Uh-huh. What you'll also see that's quite interesting about this is the actual technical work took about a month to do, and most of the time is planning and testing.
Yeah, because I was thinking of about 20 minutes or something for that, and I know some people, I mean, not everybody's as stupid as me, but I mean some people would as well. But you're saying this has got to be measured in weeks, not minutes.
Yeah, sure.
I think it
depends.
It varies. We were initially starting with a beta, so there's a level of work around that.
Yes.
Getting the understanding and implementing it. But which you'll see over time is that with the launch of Exchange 2010 Service Pack 2, what they're trying to do is build a coexistence wizard into that service pack, which means that from an Exchange perspective, you're going from many steps of manual configuration down to a wizard that should guide you through that coexistence. So if there are people looking to implement, then it's possibly worth looking at Service Pack 2 as maybe being that point.
What about migration of data?
Yeah, we did it through. We manually moved the users across, but obviously, if you're looking at a larger scale, you look at the tools or at scripting something, which we would do for this type of client.
So that involves quite a lot of moving of data around.
Sure.
As we've heard from Royal Mail with its people's experience before. Yeah, that's not a trivial part of a large migration.
Yeah, sure. I think, just to mention a couple of really key things about the project, the 2 diamonds that are on there, we're moving a test user and an IT user. So they're the surface level changes that happened. But what we really found interesting was the cultural changes that happened within the company. So by the time we moved the first user onto the system, we found that the IT admins were using a simple web interface. They were no longer worried about the Exchange databases and networking and storage. They just added a user, added a license, and we're migrating. So things are a lot simpler for them then. By the time we moved the first IT users on, they're starting to use the tools differently, so they're changing the way they run their business. And I think that's where we really saw some value, and we thought, wow, this is great. So.
How ambitious can you be about the number of users that you're using, that you're moving? Should you be looking to sort of migrate en masse, or should you be very careful at the beginning, move a few at a time?
Depends on the type of customer. If it's small business, you're probably going to go en masse, but with this scale, you
at the
definitely
moment you're
pilot
saying just pilot
Sure.
pilot on this.
At least initially.
There's 2 schools of thought, though, that we've heard before, haven't we, with BPOS. I think we've had one customer on here who said, prepare, and then go as fast as you can. Yeah. And another one said, just take it really slow and steady. I think it just depends on your user base and...
Of course, and your interaction with the client. And
exactly.
So the level of standardisation you have in your business as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think around the coexistence scenario, it means that you can run this hybrid model of the cloud and your on-premise for as long as you want to. So if you do want to extend that migration and that rollout, it can be done over a period of time.
I mean, there's a scale question here. For smaller organisations, probably it's better to go for a big bang and avoid all the overhead and hassle of coexistence if you can, although you really do have to make sure you've done your prep.
You have to grit your teeth for the first 24 hours just in case a horrible thing happens. Not saying it will, but there's always the potential. Now, the results that you got from the programme that you've done so far, you've talking about in IT ease of admin, and one question we regularly get is the IT department going to be made redundant if you start moving these sort of applications to the cloud? Because there's good work in patching.
There's definitely a change in culture. We find that most departments are stretched, so it's allowing you the space to work on the things that either make your company different or it matters, really. So we saw in our own experience that it gave people time to work on the important things.
Yeah, is a question. It's a nice thing to be able to say, well, we're going to move you to more responsible, high-level, creative jobs or anything, but there's only a limited number of those. It's, in the end, this does mean that a lot of the the admin function of the IT department does cease to exist, though.
For this product.
For this product, yes.
I think, to put that in perspective, we've done some quite interesting studies with the reg readers and got them to come back and tell us what they think of administering email systems, and descriptions like it is the most thankless job you can ever get. No one ever pats you on the back for managing an email system well, but they come and scream at you when it goes wrong.
Yeah, honestly, you should try doing this job. A few things.
I think your general point is actually a good one when you look at scaling up cloud usage in general. I think around email, I think a lot of people would just be glad to get shot of the problem, to be perfectly honest. So.
So now, is there anything on the results? Is there anything that you think you'd like to have some more, that you would have liked to have made more progress on, or is still work in progress on 365 at the moment?
Yeah, we'd like to probably, I mean, there's two things really. It was archiving. So a lot of companies have on-premise archiving, much smaller mailboxes. So you have to make a decision. Are you going to move that data up into the cloud, or have some way of looking at it on site? And we would like to spend more time on the security aspects. We know the security that's been provided within the service details of the Microsoft offering. We'd like to look at what we can do on-premise as well.
Right. Oh, okay. So get the security, a single sort of security policy or something.
Well, on mobile devices,
right.
We'd like to just rubber stamp it and make sure we're happy with it. Because this was a pilot, so.
Yes.
And I think additionally to that, I'd probably add around just link online, in that we were able to start looking at it but not really test it in anger. So from a small business we've used it, but not from an enterprise level, so it'd be nice to test that out to a further degree.
Well, apart from anything, that's going to be a real test of link, isn't it, to work out whether it is ready for that size. What do you think about that?
I don't know, to be honest, because I've heard very mixed things about Link. A lot of it comes down to the environment you're trying to use it in,
and where you're coming from.
That's right. So it's not some kind of magic switch it on and it makes life wonderful kind of thing. It does need to be implemented well and managed.
Good. Now there's a question about where the data goes. Can I keep it in the UK?
It's regional, so if you implement it, if you purchase it here, it will be in the Dublin data centre, replicated to Amsterdam.
Right. Okay. So that's again at the moment that's going to be something that some people will want to,
Yeah.
Sure.
Without going to sort of specialist local hosting, that's kind of as good as it gets for the the regional location for the big players.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's And so here are some of the things that you pulled out to just to wrap up your bit of it, that people who are implementing, these are the lessons you learn, spending the time up front, got in there. What do you think is the minimum time to make a migration? If you're making a migration, I don't know, it's 100 users and up, so a decent sized migration. Yeah.
Gosh,
I just pulled that.
I'm going to pull this one out as well. Yeah. I mean, I've probably, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, really.
Yeah. Okay. Not 2 or 3 days, but not 6 months.
It depends how you want to do it, and we want to make sure it works properly. So.
Yeah.
I think for small organisations, and I speak as someone who, made a migration not to Office 365, but to sort of hosted Exchange many years ago. And the physical migration of the email system is actually pretty sweet.
Sure.
I think the longest bit of that is actually getting your domain actually pointed to your Exchange server. But the thing that I think we found as a small business, particularly around things like SharePoint, was learning how to use it. And by default, you end up using it as like a glorified file system to dump stuff, and maybe a replacement for what you might have used Access for previously, for instance. But actually it does need thinking about. So
I guess in that figure there, I mean, if you're making client changes, and that it's the key point in that slide, is that if we talk just about the back end and moving mail up, that doesn't take very much time at all, but making sure that the service works for the company and we change the client environment.
I think that you're absolutely spot on to talk about the dependencies. The one thing which I think has been a bit of a perception problem with Office 365 is because a lot of analysts and journalists have written about it as being Microsoft's answer to Google Apps and other options out there. It's easy to focus on the online web apps, but that to me is a relatively small part of the overall equation. It's actually a hosted version of Microsoft's back-end stack with some front-end integration that's taken place as well. So I think that's probably an important point to stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree.
I've come across a lot of misunderstandings.
It's an interesting one here on on things you can learn. If you decide that if you try it, you decide it's not for you, how locked in are you? How easy is it to go back?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's one of the first things that we had to test before we went any further.
I can imagine.
So could we offboard users and could we dismantle the system? And we were able to do it. So.
You're able to do that.
I mean, obviously, there is the caveat that you've made schema changes so to facilitate some other servers. They can't be moved back, but that's about it. So.
Right, yes, of course. But yeah, but that's fine. You can get out of it. This one, I think I know what you're going to say to it. Small business, can they exist solely in Office 365?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We do.
That's what we do.
Exactly as you do. Would you recommend this, Dale? As a way, as something to think
I'm not
about?
going to comment on the maturity and readiness of Office 365 because I've no direct experience and we don't have enough users to actually make an assessment. But in principle, yes, and I think once you get below a certain level, I think you're actually mad to be running email servers and SharePoint servers in-house. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It is a huge headache.
Unless you've got a regulatory requirement or some special need, but most businesses don't.
Now, on this slide, you're talking about the internet pipe, the amount of bandwidth that you're consuming. This is something that's got to be, again, there's a question on this. What sort of bandwidth or requirements are we talking about here?
Well, there's no official sizing tool out there. You can use, there's a Microsoft Readiness tool which can test your bandwidth, but in effect it's just a bandwidth calculator. So this is what comes down to you doing your testing and where we'd got that in the project plan. So as part of doing the move requests, then we were actually testing how long it would take to migrate that mailbox over that internet link. So migrations are key with the internet pipe, but additionally you've got the resilience question around your internet pipe. Now you're putting everything into the cloud. If your pipe goes, then you're losing access to those services, so that's something that needs to be thought about as well.
So one of the Freeform guys has been writing some research up recently around the connectivity thing in cloud, and what was interesting that came out of that was a lot of people who've invested time and effort into remote access and mobile access and stuff for their on-premise systems feel that they are in pretty good shape to go down the cloud route. But actually people that have gone down the cloud route say, no, it's a different ballgame. Because people out there in remote access land and mobile land, if the connection isn't available, that's not the end of the world. The expectation, and quite often the application architectures are tolerant to that. But when you've got people in-house sitting at their desks, totally non-mobile, reliant on a remote connection, you kind of change the game. The connection now becomes absolutely critical.
Sure.
So it does matter when it goes down.
Right, and okay. Now, another quick question on this, because we've got one more slide from you, Dale, but another quick question on this. Have you found Microsoft support for you? I mean, I guess you've got a special secret number, haven't you? It's sort of kind of like, the bat phone that goes in Microsoft.
But not using the bat phone. We've used that. It's one of the first things we tested. How would the online support respond? And it's the same day. It depends on the criticality of what your problem is as well. So when you fill in your requests, or obviously you can call them. You can use the web system. The web system kind of categorises for you, and if it's critical, it would say, "Please get on the phone and call us now." So and they've been very useful. I mean, it's been we've got through. So.
Finally, Dale, to just wrap this up, I left this slide till last on this. This is for our readers who've got cloud experience, and this is the thing that they're saying is important for service level.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole range of stuff here. I think, really, I mean, we can go down the list, but I don't think it's necessary. I think a lot of this stuff, you can read it in your own...
And a lot of the stuff is what we've covered today, which is a relief, actually.
It is, but I mean, the key point I was trying to make with this is that cloud doesn't suddenly magic everything away in terms of IT considerations. In fact,
if only it did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you've heard me say it before. I'll keep banging that drum until we stop hearing the nonsense. But yeah.
No, that means to
pick up a
right at the top is SLAs, though. That's right.
Understanding your requirements, I would put before SLAs, because a lot of people ask for SLAs that they don't actually need.
Of course.
So understand what you actually need. I think that's worthwhile, because you can always pay more money to get a better quality of service, but why pay for something you don't need?
Yeah, true. I think it's also relevant that the service description document is lengthy, and the associated SLA document is very clear. I mean, it's 6 pages long, and it's very easy to work out what the service is. So. Yeah.
But things like integration management across on-premise and cloud. The contract terms are important as well. I mean, if you've got the kind of business where you might be seasonally bringing people in for a period of time and then let them go again. You want to be able to flex down as well as up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, another piece of research we've done recently with the Reg guys is, it shows that the ratchet principle has been pretty much the way things work in cloud. So you can go up,
ratchet up, but you can't
go down.
Yeah.
Until you reach the end of your contract. And, it's been pretty typical, more than you might think, given all the flexibility marketing that we hear.
Seems a good tip at the moment. Let's go month by month on this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess it's dependent upon your licensing.
Depending on your existing licensing.
Of course, yeah.
It always catches me. Guys, we're out of time. we haven't got any more time. If you want to find out more about the checkpoint research, the cloud checkpoint research that Dell's been talking about, here's our link to it, and you can find out more of the Penman guys. We haven't answered some of the questions because there were too many of them, so they're going to answer some of the questions for you. We're going to pass them on to you because they can't refuse to do it on camera. Terrific, guys. Thank you very much. Hope that's been useful for thank you very much, Hutton and John. Thank you very much, Dale. It's a quick whiz through this. Let us know how you're getting on with Office 365 because we like to know about this stuff. It'll be it's useful for Dale as well. Quite apart from anything else, helps him with his business.
You'll probably see a survey going up at some point over the next
I imagine.
couple of months,
depend on it, yeah. And please let us know what you thought of this Regcast and tune in for our next one. I've been Tim Phillips. Goodbye.